I'd like to do a video about does Buddhism require you to be a leftist? And probably obviously already, the answer to this question, I believe, is no. You do not have to be a leftist. You do not have to be a social justice warrior to be a Buddhist. In fact, I know overall, my time during meditation, especially loving kindness, has changed my views to such a level that I have become less of a liberal, less of a leftist, less of a social justice warrior. By liberal, I mean Democrat in the United States. I don't mean classic liberal. I understand that those are different, and I don't want to get into all the details of that. So, second of all, I wanted to say that I'm not on the right wing. I do not consider myself to be a conservative. None of the conservative labels fit me whatsoever. Is conservatism compatible with Buddhism? I don't know. I'm not going to address that in this talk. In the future, perhaps, we can go into that. It is an interesting question, and I'm not saying that it ought not to be discussed. It's just beyond the scope of this talk, which is that being a Buddhist doesn't have to mean equal to being a leftist, and the practices of Buddhism actually made me, ironically, less of a leftist. And I've already addressed this in another talk about how I feel one of the problems that I have in the Western Buddhist community, at least in the United States, is that it's overrun with social justice warriors, and it is synonymous with leftism. It is assumed that you're a leftist. Some of the first meditation, at least large spread meditation groups that I know of, especially Zen, came through San Francisco and New York City, and they became very popular among the left. In fact, I don't know any prominent right-wing nor even centrist prominent practitioners who are Buddhist and who are, so I just don't see a lot of overlap between Buddhism and right-wing thought, conservative thought in the United States. If there is any religion associated with being right-wing in the United States, that's Christianity. And there's a whole other kettle of fish with Christianity and whether it's compatible with Buddhist practice. And again, beyond the scope of this talk, but the fact of the matter is that we don't have a lot of representation in anti-social justice warriors in the Buddhist community. And in fact, that is one of the main points of this entire channel. That's what I'm devoting myself to. So let's get into it. What does it even mean to be a leftist or liberal, whatever, Democrat? So I have a couple of things. First of all, the role of government in one's life. I believe that those on the left want a stronger government interference in people's lives, especially with regards to social programs. Second of all, the role of immigration. Those on the left tend to be very pro-immigrant. So when I was on the left, I was very much in favor of large government programs. I was very anti-business. That's the other flip side of that. I was very open borders, open immigration, and I had a lot of disdain for white males, which should be ironic because I am a white male. So I had some self-hatred, I guess you could say. So what changed? Well, the biggest practice. So here's another thing. One of the biggest practices I did, I mentioned before, was loving kindness meditation, and that has caused me to love myself. And right away, because I have a greater self-love, that is incompatible with anti-whiteness and feminism, and anti-maleness. I don't hate myself anymore. That doesn't mean that I'm any of the phobias. I'm not a homophobe. I'm not a Islamophobe. I'm not a racist. I'm not whatever. I'm not sexist. I'm none of those things that I thought would be the opposite of that. In fact, expanding love means less phobia or less hatred or whatever. So the other change is that I used to hate the rich. I used to hate the wealthy. I used to hate the successful. And that has changed. I do not hate them anymore. Second of all, beyond love, there's the concept of resentment. I do not have resentment anymore, at least at the level that I did in the past. I still have hate and resentment. Let's not fool ourselves. But the level of hatred and resentment has greatly reduced due to mostly my loving kindness practice, but also just straight up silent meditation, the samatha or tranquility meditation, which has allowed my mind to be still to a certain extent, and it's eliminated thoughts. And among the thoughts that have been eliminated are the thoughts of resentment and hatred of other groups, hatred of people that just identify as being on the right. Still not a big fan of like racists or whatever, but there's a certain level where you just recognize that we're all human beings and we all suffer, and we are all trying to deal with life in the best way that we know how. So, and that knowing that about humans doesn't make any excuses for people. It doesn't mean that we accept their views or whatever, or we normalize them, whatever that means. It just means that we see each other as basic humans. And that to me was the core of what I thought leftism was about, until I learned that there's an extreme level of resentment, which I'm going to get into. The resentment is just this feeling of that the people have one over on you, that people have it better than you, people are luckier than you, and they deserve to live better than you do. That right there, first of all, that's incompatible with the views of karma. So at least if you believe in reincarnation, another Buddhist view, core Buddhist view of where we're incarnated, our karma, the law of karma is infallible. We cannot get rid of our karma. Our present suffering is a result of past karma. These are very simple core values in Buddhism. It's totally incompatible with leftism, by the way. So right there, because leftism is the idea that we're all equal, we all are born equal, and we ought to be made equal by government programs. If you see the law of karma, you realize that the U.S. government tax money cannot refute the law of karma. So once again, not making excuses for people, not saying, oh, if you're poor, you deserve to be poor or whatever. Everyone deserves love, affection, respect, a good life at a certain point. But the question politically is who's going to provide that? And because I'm not a leftist anymore, I'm not sure whether the government ought to shoulder that entire burden. Now, I still do believe in some government programs, which is why I am not on the right. I do believe in certain forms of welfare, especially for children. I believe in protecting the underclasses. I believe in assistance for education, but I do not believe in for example, Bernie Sanders' free education. I do not believe college should be free. Maybe lower levels of education. Again, that's a lot of these things now are open for debate. And there's another factor in why I'm no longer on the left, is my level of certainty has gone down. Especially Zen seems to emphasize uncertainty because we have a certain level of humility. We don't know everything about everything. So right there, the idea of an overarching government program that's going to solve all these problems is incompatible with these views. Being uncertain says that you don't want that level of control because you know you can't do the best. So to me, it's absurd how arrogant the left is, and how arrogant they are, that they know all the answers and they're smarter than everybody. That's another thing I believed. I was smarter than everyone. I know better than everybody. And yet I was very poor and unsuccessful, and yet I thought that somehow I was better and smarter than people and I deserved better out of life. And then I went on to be lucky. I got a career. I worked hard for that, but also I'm lucky to be gifted intellectually, and I'm lucky that currently our present economy, as is, tends to favor my lifestyle. As far as what I do as a hobby, they're willing to pay good money for that. And yeah, that's great. That's wonderful. I'm lucky, and that also that has given me less resentment once again, which has made me not so much on the left. So. Oh, also, I don't believe the U.S. is uniquely evil. That is another belief that I had. Believe in the whole colonialism concept. And colonialism obviously happened is a historic truth, but the way that colonialism has been portrayed by the left is very misleading to being a complete fairy tale, totally untrue. And the more history I've learned, that's another thing, another nail in the coffin of my leftism beliefs is I do not believe the leftist view of history. I do not believe the leftist fairy tale. I think it's just total rubbish. And again, beyond the scope of this video, I guess, aside from saying that I don't believe in the leftist version of history, other than that, I don't want to go too much into my views on colonialism, because that'll probably be an hour. Except for the fact that I just don't believe their version. So if you do believe the leftist version of history, perhaps you should read some more. And the whole idea of tarring and smearing people as that's not real history or that's propaganda, just give that shit a rest, please. Just please. At a certain level, all of history is a fairy tale. It's all propaganda. I believe that. But I do believe that if you read enough news sources, if you read enough literature, you can read between the lines and you can get somewhat of a coherent story of history and understand. Another thing that's another plank of leftism that's been eradicated in me is my view of human nature. While I do believe that we do have internally a part of us that is clean, pure, beautiful, luminous, deserving of love, free of defilement. On the other hand, our animal nature that is very much part of us is very self-centered, and every human is capable of enormous acts of evil, and the only thing that's stopping that is society. So I do not, it flips Rousseau on its head. I do not believe Rousseau's view of society, that society is uniquely evil, but rather I believe that humans are capable of evil, as animals are, without society. So I think that society actually does make us more civilized. I have no hatred for Europe. That's another. Okay, here's another thing: is an irony of the left is their worship of Europe and all things Europe. Everything is better in Europe. And then you talk to actual Europeans. You go to Europe. You get a middle class lifestyle in the United States. You compare your lifestyle to that of Europeans, and you realize that it's not the bee's knees. Europe has some advantages and some disadvantages of the United States, but it is not the most best place in the entire world. Better or worse is relative anyway, and the United States is a pretty damn good country in all ways, and it ranks up there with Europe in many, many ways. That's why Europeans have come here over the centuries. So but that leads to another contradiction in leftism. They worship Europe, European government and everything, but they hate whiteness and white people, and they hate Western civilization, which was bizarre because Europe is a product of Western civilization. So that's just completely wacky and untenable, and that's why it's incompatible with this common sense. So therefore, it's incompatible with my current views. What else do I have here? The idea of violence is very much changed me as well. I am a strong proponent of nonviolence. I do believe in not just nonviolence in one's actions, not just going around punching people. Obviously that's wrong, but also like one violent way of treating oneself, violent speech, even violent thoughts. I think ought to be at least monitored in a mindful way, and hopefully eliminated, or if you are violent, you're doing it for a mindful reason. You do it for a wise reason. And because of that, I realize, that combined with I'll have to find it and link it, but there's a paper from Buddha who said that basically, a paper from Buddha, you know what I mean, there's some very old sutra, very old teaching from Buddha that states, it gives a list of the things that are required before one meditates properly. And if you read that, then you'll realize that not everybody can meditate. Like, that's a misnomer. The whole concept that everyone can meditate, or that things don't distract you from meditation. There's so many ridiculous, absurd beliefs about Buddhism that Buddha himself did not teach, or the earliest teachings of Buddhism do not teach that. It's incompatible with early Buddhism. So there's that. And because of that, one of the things required before you meditate is safety. If you do not have safety, you cannot meditate. And how is safety created? Well, either the safety is created by man's willingness to inflict violence, or the state. And in here, I see the state does protect me. And again, another irony, the left wants the state to be very strong except for the military. And a state that has a weak military doesn't exist as a state. It's like a cell without a cell membrane. A country without its ability to control its borders doesn't exist as a country. A cell and what does it make? What does a cell make itself a cell? Its ability to make things different from the outside of it. That's what makes it a cell. That's what makes it unique. That's what makes it a thing. And a border of the country, its ability to control things going in and out of it, its ability, that is a country. And if a country can't control its borders, then it ceases to be a country. If a cell ceases to control its borders, it ceases to be a cell. And then you die. And that's suicide. So once again, I believe that leftism is suicide. It's a prescription for suicide. It's a philosophy that preaches suicide. So I'm not suicidal. Buddha taught against suicide. He said that you'll just be recreated. It's like a horse. A man committing suicide in Buddhism is like a horse destroying its harness. It's a waste of time. You know, the owners of the horse are just going to recreate that harness. They're just going to make another one. If you kill yourself, you just have another life. And then you have that negative karma, the violence that you did against yourself. So once again, if you're going to be nonviolent victim, you have to be not nonviolent against as you. If you're violent against yourself, then you're violent. If you're violent against whites, men, the state, whatever, the United States, you're a violent person, not compatible with nonviolence. So I mentioned the large state being willing to do violence. By that, I mean police and the military. I'm standing right across the street from a police station. I'm safe because we have good police and military. And yeah, they're not perfect, whatever. That's a whole left-wing talking point about how they have to be held to this bizarre utopian standards of perfection that they will not be held to. I mean, they can't be held to. It's ridiculous. Overall, our military and police are good as far as Americans go, and creating a safe environment for us. And this safe environment has allowed us to meditate. That safety itself, so I don't have to have a gun. I do not have to be violent. I do not have to defend myself in most cases. And this is allowing me to do meditation to begin with. The very act of that allows for meditation. And again, that's a sutra from Buddha. There's a list of things you need to meditate. And I recognize that, and therefore I do not hate our military. I do not hate our police. And in fact, I'm filled with gratitude for them. Filled with gratitude with many, many people, which is why I'm incompatible with leftism and its hatred of the West. And finally, the other thing that I've mentioned this before, I'll mention again, there's the notion of Hinayana. There's another talk I'll link, but that I already gave on that. It's self-realization. Hinayana means little wheel. It's a derogatory term for meditators like myself who wish to liberate themselves only. And the reason for that is First of all, I can't liberate other people. I can't meditate for other people. You got to do your own work. You can't. People can't do it for you. It would be nice if we can. I like the idea of dedicating merit and giving gratitude for all beings and spreading love. But let's face it, at the end of the day, only you can liberate yourself. I can't liberate you. I can only liberate me. And therefore, that's the only logical proposition. Once again, I feel that's incompatible with the left, because the left are trying to save everybody. And I don't think that's necessary. I think that helping people is good, but I think that it ought to be done from the inside. It ought to be your decision. It ought to be forced on you, especially through manipulation and guilt. Those are not positive ways, but those are the tools of the left, and they're the ways the left tries to manipulate people and control their behavior. So those are some of the reasons why not only do I believe that I'm a centrist, I'm not a leftist anymore, but I believe that in a lot of ways Buddhism is incompatible with what we consider to be the left in the United States, the Democratic Party, and social justice.